go to
More
Cuba.
black people.
Yes, and it's the sound of people, and these are stories and songs about people's struggles.
You know, while you're at the house, we have this film.
struggles.
What are you doing with my coffee?
Well, in case someone shows up.
Give me that.
You can play it
I
right
think I
here.
can manage. You know. So, at the house, we have this film with Louis Armstrong in it and Mahalia Jackson.
Okay.
And it's about the origination of jazz. It's fiction, it's fictionalized, and it's in the French Quarter. But it's the story about how the elites hated it in the beginning and tried to suppress it. It really must have been something back then.
They see it as counter music. Even when I think Elvis Presley came out to do rock and roll, they called it as the devil's work. That he's making women grind and dance and soon.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, he got it from the black people, too.
Yeah. So it's interesting how music has been challenging the status quo. So you have always, and then they appropriate.
Right.
And when they appropriate it, they again take it and put it into a shelf where people can't reach it. So the jazz clubs, jazz musicians who now come into Bombay, they would only visit these fancy clubs and go back, you know. So that's why when they come to Dharavi, they come to the slum, they do a workshop with the kids. There's a lot of learning for them also. So it's their growth also. It's not just that they are teaching where the kids don't care what music. It could be a group of people teaching them jazz.
They're good to go.
Salsa, you know, because they meet all these musicians. They do beatboxing and they take it to it like this. Because they have no baggage with them. So we stop, there's a group called Bauklang from Berlin. These are some of the topmost beatboxers in the world. Okay, so they were doing a workshop with the kids. The kids they picked it up in about 20 minutes, they were also doing the beat.
Oh.
Wow.
So now they've incorporated that into the music also.
We're talking with Vinod Shetty today from Mumbai, Bombay. Vinod directs the ACORN Foundation of India, was part of the Fair Grinds dialogue. We're lucky to have him visiting New Orleans. So rather than this being in India, as usual, we're actually having him here in New Orleans in the community space at Fair Grinds Coffeehouse on St. Claude. We're going to talk about a number of things, but we're going to welcome Vinod. We've been talking already about our relationship with the Blue Frog Jazz Club and Dharavi Rocks. I think is that what you were explaining to?
Yes.
Okay, so Dharavi Rocks has been an exciting project, and probably we've gotten more positive press in the Mumbai area on that one piece of our work than anything else, haven't we, Vinod?
Yes.
People love that Dharavi Rocks music, and that's on YouTube as well. But we're just going to talk about whatever's on our mind. There's just a couple of us so far, but we want to catch, obviously Marie has been our web person, and Beth has heard my stories of many, many visits and is hearing more this weekend. But we want to catch people up to date on how our recyclers projects are going, or what's happening in Dharavi, and how the truck has worked out, and all the things we would have normally talked about if I'd been there.
So thanks, Wade. Nice to be here and be with Beth and Marie. And the nice thing about New Orleans is that it feels like to be back at home. You're sweating, and
That's what I've often
skin
said.
is moist.
When I'm in Mumbai, I feel like I'm home.
So this is home, and a nice bit of sweat trickling down your back.
That's right.
is
That's
Bombay.
how you know.
So about ACORN Foundation's work in Bombay. Mainly it's with rack pickers, as you know, and waste collectors. We work in one of the largest slums in Asia, that is Dharavi. It has a population of 1.5 million people, and that's nearly 10% of the population of Bombay. So nearly 60% of the population of Bombay lives in slums, ghettos, into small neighborhoods, and these are the most undeveloped or ungentrified areas, and people, they're mainly migrants who have come into the city to find work. And without this sweat and labor of these people, the city won't work. So, especially Dharavi has become a township of its own now. And the waste collection and the waste segregation is a huge industry there. We have nearly 1,000 units which are recycling all kinds of dry waste, paper, plastic, cardboard, wood, and electronics waste. So when ACORN started its work, it identified this section of workers as being unorganized, unrepresented, and they did not have any common identity as the working class, or they were not even within the labor laws. So organizing them not only gave a voice to them, but it also highlighted their contribution to recycling and waste management, which the entire city talks about it. A lot of politicians give their lip service, but these are the people who actually implement it without any kind of reward, because they are not paid by any employers, they are basically self-employed. So you find this, the rag picker, the waste collector working for survival, and this is the lowest job which he can find in the job market when you enter Bombay. So most of the migrants who come in and who have no kind of support structure are either in the landfills, or because there is no housing available, nor is the state offering any social security. So the migrants have to come in and find their own space. So most of the spaces are found in the landfills or in the garbage dumps, and most of the migrants who come in belong to some of the most underprivileged sections of society. So that would include in the caste system, the lowest castes, mainly the Dalits. So facing oppression and marginalization in their villages, they move to the cities to lose their stigma of being from a lower caste, because that is what their leaders have always told them, to come to the cities and get into the melting pot of the working class, so that their identity as a caste is merged into the working class and they will not face oppression. So another large section is Muslims, who are also amongst the more poorest of poor in these migrants who come in. And then we have women who face a lot of oppression in their home fronts. Many of them are underprivileged, many of them are abandoned, many of them are simply pushed out of their houses, and they are also part of this workforce. And the last but not least are the children. So you have a substantial number of children who are either abandoned or who have run away from their houses, facing either oppression from their own families or they were not cared for. They also enter into this stream of workers, because it doesn't need papers, it doesn't need any identity proof. Anybody can pick up plastic from the streets.
A lot of Bangladeshi at one point too, but that may
Yes, so that could be a small percentage of people who, again, the border between Bangladesh and India is very porous, and they were once part of, so there's a lot of cultural exchanges. So given the fact that this entire workforce is unorganized, it gave us an opportunity to start working with some of the most marginalized, and as Mahatma Gandhi always said, that look for the poorest of poor. So amongst this workforce, you will find the poorest of poor. And this gave us an opportunity to put up a community center in Dharavi. And that was also our recycling center. And thus ACORN started work there. We also did a documentary. So that was our research into the lives of these rag pickers. So for 3 months, along with a filmmaker called Parashar Barua, we followed the rag pickers for 3 months, and made a documentary called Waste, which is then being shown nearly 500 times in schools and colleges. And this documentary has now been is also on the net, and Waste gave an insight. I showed this in various schools, and every time we show it to different classes. So as the kids come into the 5th grade or the 6th grade, it's become part of the syllabus now. And we organize trips to Dharavi because this is the window for the privileged kids of these schools to also look at poverty. And for them, there is a face to poverty instead of just a theory about what life is. Coming to Dharavi for them and interacting with the kids with whom we work gives them a real relationship with poverty and allows them to engage with the world. So we organize busloads of kids to come there and take a walk through. We've devised our own tour. So this is a tour of the recycling district. And the kids surprisingly have shown tremendous interest in the work of ACORN. They organize programs, and in fact in the American school we have an ACORN club there. So the club is run by the kids themselves, and they invite our kids to come there once a week, and the kids are given access to all the sporting facilities like a swimming pool. They are taught baseball or basketball. This is really not possible otherwise, because the American school is even more elite for the elite of India. So you won't pass through the gates. So calling a bunch of kids from a slum is a huge impact, and I would say it is also, as much as it is an opportunity for our kids to play these games, I would say it is more an opportunity for the kids from the American school who are your future leaders or future people who will be in power to actually understand India. And if we need to understand India, this is the best way. And this is the same for the musicians who have been coming from the Blue Frog and having these workshops with the kids, that they also learn to look at their own songs and their music and put in these experiences into those songs. So ACORN has always been a multimedia project. It was never solely a charity organization or an NGO. It was an organizing platform which had space for a multimedia reach, because the young today are wanting to engage through these mediums, be it the documentary films, be it music, be it art. And so we've also given them an opportunity to visit the slum and tell these stories through their medium, because through their work, which is very important, the artists or the academics engage with civil society. And we have a book published now which is called Dharavi, the City Within, which again are stories, which is a collection of stories by some of the top journalists of Bombay, nearly 20 of them. And their insight into the slum is very interesting because they have picked up various aspects of people's lives, and they've been able to write about all these small experiences of people, and it's never been done before. So this is how ACORN has worked, and through our work we've come in touch with the children of the community, and we have about 150 kids now who are in our program, the education program, which is again totally volunteer based, where we have our supporters and volunteers who come and teach the kids, not through any formal syllabus, but it's an informal education where the kids are taught a subject which is close to the volunteer's heart. So it's 2 hours every day, and again the students are mixed. It's not just one age or one class. but it could be the kids who are working, it could be kids who are just dropouts, it could be kids from the community, and all of them are mixed up in the classroom. And the volunteers teach them computers, spoken English, art, culture. It would be art with theatre or music as in the Dharavi Rocks. And on Sundays we have sports. We have a football team which is again trained by professionals. So all these activities are all under the banner of ACORN. And I wouldn't say that we are large in terms of the size of Bombay, but we are making a very significant impact, and this intervention into people's lives is very important. And we've been able to attract a lot of volunteers and people who are especially very powerful in their mediums to either make documentary films or write books or music and take this further.
And the relationship with the American School and others, we also do sorting and recycling for a partnership with a number of these schools. So it also provides employment, and I don't know how many schools now, but it was 15, 20 or?
Yes, these are schools. Basically, this idea came as access to waste, because what we started doing is we run waste segregation and waste management workshops for these schools, and in return we ask them to give us the segregated waste, which is not asking for much. We are asking for their trash. So by creating wealth and by showing them that if you segregate your waste and remove it from contamination, we will create wealth, and that wealth again is education and giving livelihood to so many people. And they are given the opportunity to either teach, that is volunteer, or to even visit the slum. So it is a total interactive kind of education process. So this, we've also worked with organizations like Bloomberg, Marsh Insurance. These are large offices who also send their their employees to volunteer with us. And in the American school, the students are all involved. It's part of their syllabus, and they are attached to ACORN activities right till they pass through school. So ACORN has become like a household word for the American school, the German school, we have
French school, I know.
Yes.
One.
So and these international schools, in fact, is part of the syllabus now, and they've been able to connect this to their own education in waste management. So we've given it a different face to it. We've given them a cause, and instead of teaching recycling just as an environmental issue, we have taken it beyond these, beyond the textbook, into the lives of people.
The classes are held at the Jesuit.
Yes, at the Xavier's College of Technical College, which is a Jesuit institute. So they have lent us their classroom and also their grounds, which is a football ground they've allowed us to work on. So we get access to this due to the good offices of the Jesuits. And what is interesting is the secular nature of all these activities. Although a lot of kids come from a predominant Muslim background, because of that area and the recycling activities, the Jesuits are the ones who are offering the space, and most of the kids and volunteers who come from schools could be Hindus, could be others. So there is a secular fabric to the work we do, which is different from the other organizations.
Absolutely. There may be any time we can stop and have some questions.
Is there any conflict with the government?
No, at present none. We had a small conflict in the sense that a couple of years back, the municipal corporation demolished a whole lot of houses, 500 houses of our members, under a judgment of the High Court which directed that they should keep a certain distance from the water lines. So these slums were built around the water line at one time.
These are huge water
Pipes.
culverts, yeah, 20 feet in
These
diameter.
pipes are bringing water from the lakes to the
Come
city.
to the mangrove swamps that are left.
So people have basically found various places to live, which are, which they've been allowed to live for so long. And suddenly by this change of this High Court order, suddenly made this entitle them to their own houses. So that is the one time we had to petition the government, we had to negotiate with them to give housing to those whose houses have been broken. And we succeeded in rehabilitating some of them. And many of them were just simply relocated or they had to leave. So we also did a small project with the University of Scotland where we tried to trace some of the people who were sent away from those areas, trying to find out where these people have gone, where they migrated. Because the project was basically to find their links. So that is basically through word by mouth, because there's no other trail left behind. So it was through our kids and through their friends we started this project. So when they would take photographs of each other and just link this chain of migration. So it's a very interesting way of writing history also, because it's basically through people. So they know, somebody remembers, that person was moved somewhere else, he was next to us. Because there's nothing left. The 500 houses were all demolished. So we recreated those housing and in each house who lived. So that was only through memory.
Where did they move?
They moved it to other parts of the city. But this,
Not all together.
not all together, they were totally, unless they were part of the rehabilitation program. And the rehabilitation program, they were given housing about 2 hours away from where they lived. So the whole access to their workplace or to their schooling was lost. So people had to just leave all that and get back and then travel, and because many of the another theory which I believe in is that the slums, by people living in such conditions, they actually subsidize the labor for the city, because they save cost by living in slums within the city. So the employers don't pay for their housing, nor do they pay for their transport, because they walk to work. And all this subsidy also goes into their the conditions of their living, that they are willing to live in without proper sanitation, without proper water, drinking water. And the city prospers because of that. The city becomes a global city through the sweat and labor of people living in such conditions. So the minute you move them away from that work, they cannot offer their services to the city.
They live where they work and they work where they live. Prince Charles thinks that's the model for, sustainable communities is Dharavi. This notion that you can live where you work and work where you live. And of course, the other big issue with the government has been the development plan,
Yes.
where clearly this is right smack almost in the middle of some of what could be the most valuable real estate now for future development in Mumbai. And there's been a long process of trying to figure out how to protect what's in Dharavi and do this transition. You might want to describe sort of what the compromise is there now, because that was a long, bitter struggle.
So that's the Dharavi redevelopment plan. So the whole of Dharavi is located on, say, 53 acres of land. Just 53 acres. 1.5 million. So in those 53 acres also large sections are blocked for civic amenities. So the actual area in which people are living would be much less. So I would put it down to say 35 to 40 acres. So if you look at 1.5 million into 40 acres, it would be one of the most densely populated areas of the world, I would say. So
Take the square footage of our lot here in New Orleans, maybe 1,000 people living there with us, 500.
so the
Just to give you a,
So we had this fancy architect who wanted to just, he was educated in America and he was connected to some consulting firms who got a eager politician who was ready to implement his plans. So he came up with this plan to demolish all the houses in one go. So he wanted a flat surface of 53 acres and which he would redevelop in his own way. So now the question comes is as to who lives there. Because as per the plan, he would like to develop part of the land and give part of it for commercial development. So now there is only a limited amount of housing or commercial space he can give as per his viability. So then they worked out a cut-off rate that beyond this 1995 or 2000, whoever has come in will not be eligible for rehabilitation. Or if you do not have documents to prove that you are living here or you have a house to yourself, you will not qualify for the rehab. So that meant nearly 40% of people living there would be displaced because most of them live within the factories and some of them work in their houses. So part of the subsidy which they give, it makes it viable, is to live in the factories. So you save on transport. By living there, you save on housing. And by cooking there also, you
and
save
you
on
can work,
food.
12,
24
18, 20 hours a day because you're right there. You get tired, just roll over, roll back the other way, you get back to work.
So this plan, this guy who's an architect by profession, did not have any clue as to where these people are going to go. So it would have ended up in the largest displacement in modern time of people. And then a whole lot of us got together, various civil society groups, town planners, trade union people, and they critiqued this plan and they exposed this plan for what it is. That by providing housing for 50% and highlighting that you're giving free housing, you're actually displacing 50% of the other population. And you just don't want to know about them because you're doing this survey by showing due diligence by, and who decides what's the cutoff? Who's a migrant, who's not a migrant? And who
How do
comes
they
in?
decide who gets a house?
Yes. So what is the pecking order and hierarchy in a city? And you have educated yourself somewhere else and you
Well, it sounds
become
like
this.
he came to America.
Yeah.
That's what we like to do.
He worked here.
He
Back
was.
to New Orleans Commission.
So so if you look at the displacing of the poor, it's global. The reasons and the justification can be, always similar all over. So the way people are disfranchised or, removed from the system is quite common everywhere. So you see a trend there. So then we critiqued this plan and we exposed it, and there was a lot of the city also woke up to it, and the politicians also understood that they were not going to get re-elected if they were to pass this plan, so they had to shelve it. So that was the victory of the people. And so now what happens is the government has taken over the plan and they are doing it sector-wise. And they have promised that they will not throw out anybody, but they will try and accommodate as many people as possible. Now that is easier said than done, but it's going on at a much slower process because people are continuing to live. The important thing is this 1.5 million people are living, educating themselves, working, celebrating their lives, and life is going on. So this is like fixing something which is not broken, and telling people how they should live. So you're not able to help them in their lives, but you want to demolish their little small lives which they have, that also you want to take it away. So that is planning for you.
But isn't there some gradual timeline now, or no? Where they're doing a piece of it?
No,
Oh, that's all held
you
up?
see the chief ministers who come in, they come for 5 years.
Right.
So this being a hot potato, no chief ministership really wants to rush into
Good,
it.
good.
So they all drag it through their 5 years and hand it over to the next guy. So it's like this hot parcel which they give it to somebody else.
And do the members get involved with the politics and elections?
Very much. So this is an area which has a large voter base, and that's why it's like a voting. It's like a vote bank. So whichever party wants to come into power would get 1 seat of parliament, 2 seats in the assembly, about 7 corporators in the municipal corporation. So that's a power by itself, and not to say the foot soldiers will get, because if this people were to come onto the streets in the heart of the city will stop. So if you need a powerful 10,000 force procession, they will come from here. So every politician wants to somehow try and latch on to this slum and try and bring them onto his party.
I hate to ask this question, but you do know that the way most Americans relate to the Gari slums is through that movie, Slumdog Millionaire. How do people in India view that movie?
People in India don't take it seriously at all, because it is basically from the imagination and the fertile imagination of Hollywood. So it's totally like a fictionalized Charles Dickens story, So people know the real, what is real, and they watch the movies, and people in India watch movies all the time. So they're used to somebody beating up 10 people. There are villains, there are things falling off the skies. So all these things happen, and life goes on. So Slumdog Millionaire, what it did was, in a positive way, is also to create interest in Dharavi.
There's hardly a newspaper article that mentions ACORN that doesn't mention the Slumdog Millionaire movie, so.
So what happened is a large number of people got interested after the movie to visit Dharavi, and they in fact now Dharavi has become a must go-to location for all tourists. And some of our friends there are conducting tours there.
Reality tours. Oh, we've tried to partner with them so many times. We've met with those people.
So there are at least 2 other companies which are organizing tours. Yes, and these are all local youth who are taking people on tours, and there are 3-hour tours.
We've given tours.
Yeah. So I would say that in fact this movie has been a icebreaker, and it's something which has created interest. And the government is also wanting now to they don't want this image to go out there, so they are taking pains to kind of clean up the place and try and get water there, because this Dharavi has been a subject of a lot of research, and many students come there to find out about solutions for drinking water, for education, for health.
And what about the documentary Waste? Has it had any effect like that, a positive effect?
The positive effect is mainly with students, because waste is shown to a large number of schools and colleges. Students want to volunteer, students want to visit Dharavi, and students actually understand the work of rat pickers and waste collectors. Because till then, they were not documented. So nobody knew who was picking up that one Bisleri bottle which is thrown out of the window of a car. So suddenly kids have become aware that there's so much plastic which is lying in the rivers and in the mangroves. And this knowledge is something which they would like to act upon. So in terms of organizing and creating awareness, it has been a huge help.
The other thing to keep in mind is that the general sanitation, I mean, Mumbai is a city of about 15 million or so, but the sanitation system that you would know here in New Orleans is not the sanitation system that exists in Mumbai. So it's not like you have 2 days to put your trash out in a can and a truck comes by.
There's
You
no
might
truck
just
coming? Is that what you're saying?
Huh?
There's no truck coming?
There's no truck coming. Winter is coming, no truck coming. Explain how the sanitation system works.
The sanitation system is
Waste management.
Waste management is again very much centric to the elite parts of the city, and even there a lot of people don't segregate their waste. So whereas in the slums there's hardly any cleanup done. So the waste which is going to the landfill many times is unsegregated waste. And being such a large city, the 10 tons of waste which is created every day, there is, no place for it to go. And many times, so this segregation of plastic and anything that can be recycled is reducing the load on the landfills. So in terms of contribution to the city, the rag picker and the waste collectors do a huge, it's a contribution which is not even acknowledged.
I'm sure.
But isn't it the case that a lot of waste collectors go up into flats and pick it up almost daily, then put it in a collection
Yes.
sorting area?
So in these societies, they have waste collectors who go house to house, that is per building, per apartment or a street, and they collect the waste from the house, from the doors, and they clean up they sweep the compound, the common areas, and collect it in a place, and then the truck comes there and everything is thrown into the truck. So this has been a challenge, that to collect the trash in a segregated manner, but they end up throwing it into the same truck, even if you give them 2 separate trucks. But that is also because some of the people who work on these trucks are not even paid their wages, so they are paid through trash. So
Their ability to resell the trash.
so by the time the truck reaches the landfill, if they manage, in fact that is something which I saw in Washington DC area also, that the truck, but the only difference is it's not a huge garbage truck. There's somebody segregating the waste, from 3 or 4 bins. But what you see in Mumbai is everything is thrown into one truck, and then the people who are handlers are actually separating the contaminated dry waste which has value, and on the way to the landfill, this waste will be, dry waste will be sold to other small shopkeepers on the way, people who deal with recyclables.
Brokers. So e-waste, I mean, it depends, there's a market for
Anything
much
that is of value. So that would be the wages of the person
who are
who is working on
the
the truck.
sanitation crew.
So you don't know how much you're making on any given day or something?
No, it's just based on what you find in the trash. But like say, supposing you have elite areas or you have a 5-star hotel in your, so
Better
there would be a
So
premium.
how do you get that job?
So that would be a premium. So there they would have an auction of that place. Of course, it's an unofficial auction. Even for tipping charges, if the waste is coming from, say, the Taj Mahal Hotel, as a rag picker, you'd have to pay a sum to the driver to tip it where you are working. So there is
Dump it so that you can sort it. You're paying that for part of your business costs before you sell it to
And
a
this
broker or whoever to make the money.
so
But
this
on
is
the
the
whole,
same
our
in South-
recyclers make a lot more than other people.
Yes, our recyclers are not going into the waste, and what we've changed is the scientific method of, that they do not have to actually physically go through contaminated waste and separate the plastic and the recyclables, but the recyclables are kept ready for them, and we go and collect it. ACORN now has a truck of its own, so we take the truck to the offices, and every day the pickup is done and brought back to our center. So in terms of our community space, we have separated the two. The children's space is now a large space where there's a library, and we even have facilities for music. We have a mic, we have amplifiers, and that's like a large workshop space, so we can have our programs there. And sometimes if the classroom is not available, the classes are held there. And for the recycling, we have a separate area now, which is a smaller area, but only recycling is done there.
Welcome to Mumbai, welcome to Dharavi. What other questions does
Is this the way it works throughout the country?
In terms of waste management, yes. Like a city like Bangalore, surprisingly had a huge crisis. You see what, they had a crisis where the landfill filled up, and the new landfill which the city decided to transfer its garbage, the villagers suddenly revolted and they decided to take affirmative action and did not allow the landfill. So overnight there was a huge crisis where all the trucks and the garbage had no place to go. So they had to take up, so somebody moved the High Court and got the waste management rules implemented immediately, and through a judgment of the court, that you have to involve the rag pickers, you have to talk to the waste collection, and you have to talk to NGOs who are working in waste collection. And every ward-wise, they were asked to allocate space for the rag pickers. So now all the streets, all the main localities, despite whatever the high values of land are, they have to create their own space where rag pickers can officially get access to the waste and segregate. And this is what we've been even advocating for Mumbai, that you need to create the space and give us space where we can run these scientific segregation centers, and where the rag pickers can even rest, and we can then talk to them and give them some advice and give their ID proofs. Because the other thing that ACORN does is helps the rag pickers get their identity cards, ration cards, and also open bank accounts. The new government has been promising that they want to reach the benefits of the economy to every section of society. So they have been encouraging people to open bank accounts. And earlier we could not open bank accounts for the rag pickers because they had no documentation.
Right.
So under the new scheme, we've tried to open, even for the kids we are opening accounts. And so in these bank accounts, we try and match whatever they are saving, so that it goes into a recurring fund which will be accessible to the kids when they are 18. So this is part of their long-term plans. And we also want the rag pickers to get benefit of certain insurance policies and Mediclaim which the government has come out with.
Social Security schemes?
So they get personal accident insurance, and they'll get access to a health plan for a minimum amount.
Yes, indeedy. Okay, this has been great. Any other questions that people can think of? Ready to go, huh, Beth?
Well, very interesting, particularly the dilemmas of the migrants that are solved by the organization towards long-term, economic stability, essentially.
Well, this ID cards, the rations are what gets you food and
Subsidized.
fuel.
And is it hard to get an ID card?
very
Yes.
difficult, because that also helps you to vote. See, the same issue which
Oh,
ACORN
yeah.
faced in the USA, that when there is a big election going on, that number
Yeah.
of registrations are again based on your ration card. So if you don't have ID, you don't get registered as a voter. If you get registered as a voter, then you can vote for a politician or for a party which may come into power by a vote. So they've made it very tough for migrants especially to get any kind of identification which would enable them to vote. And many times politicians will help them get identity just enough to vote. So they'll get them registered for voting, but they will not give them access to ration cards or
Rations and
anything,
food.
or housing.
And often the
Both things work.
the ID often goes back to their home village, which might be in Bihar or whatever.
UP, because most of them are coming from the hinterlands of the country, far away. So their families
But
are
they're moving
back
from
there.
the south, from the Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas to the big city.
So they come to the city only to work for 6 months, 12 hours a day, and then go back to their villages say, during harvesting for 2 months, and then come back again and work for another stretch.
So getting the ration card to these, you have to have an address frequently to have a ration card too, don't you?
Yeah.
So if you're squatting in Dharavi, there's just, you can imagine the problem.
So
our
you need a
ability to get these,
residential proof, you need to show that you're living there for so many years and you have access to all this. So most people don't have those papers, they don't even have a documentation to show that they're living in a place or they're renting it.
plus you have the issue of slums versus registered slums. You can get, a registered slum can get water.
Yeah, because it has to be declared as a slum, so there are areas which
So if you're just a slum and don't have a declaration of slumness, you got a problem in India.
because it's not, you can't just build
And that's
anywhere.
what it says on the declaration, you are officially a slum.
Yet it has your name and not
Because
address, so
then
official
you're-
slums are not
then-
easy, that's a big victory if you get a slum recognized.
So then you can get access to redevelopment and a lot of.
Redevelopment funds, the water truck will come, or they'll do a
So
standpipe.
just because you're poor and just because you're living somewhere in these conditions.
Just because
doesn't-
you're living in slum conditions, that doesn't mean you're an official slum dweller.
Almost sounds like if you self-certify as a salon.
You can't, no.
What
You
you're
gotta
doing
set
is
up through the
illegal.
corporation.
You're illegal to do it anyway.
The municipal corporation, the Bombay Municipal Corporation has to certify the slums.
Well,
Well,
then
it's
you better
just
be
like
organized
here.
over here to help take care of over there and build your base. Is that it?
It's complicated.
No, there's a lot of demand for housing and for real estate in Bombay.
Yeah.
That's mainly because of land value and because the value of a real estate in Mumbai is the same as New York and Tokyo. It should be at the same rates, only in the city of Mumbai. So you look at the social parameters and you look at the cost of real estate, you have no connection. Because in terms of social health, education, we are down there. We may be, in terms of countries, we are at the 110 or 125. And in terms of the cost of living and real estate, we are up there among the top 5 countries in the world.
Vinod was telling me about the cost of what a place in Bandra would be
Yes.
now.
So a 3-bedroom apartment in Bandra would be the same as a house in Arlington in Washington DC.
$1 million.
$1 million.
US dollar, not rupees.
Who
We're
can
not
pay
talking-
that?
Rich people in Mumbai.
Well,
Or
People have to, who have bought houses over a period of time, they're not selling, and those who have the money now are buying. So it's an artificial bubble which has been created. So it's created to keep the status quo and keep this. So it can, if everybody were to decide to sell, the whole market will collapse.
is there any chance that there will be a shift in dynamics in India? Like you know, these aging Western countries where people don't have children and so therefore, you know, it's an aging population. Is anything like that liable to happen?
In India,
Uh-huh.
no, India is the youngest.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
But I mean, it's not gonna ever happen, you think?
no,
well,
because,
ever is a long time.
because right now the reason why India is doing well is the if you look at the population now, it's a large middle class which has purchasing power. And again, in about 10 years, India would be having one of the largest populations of youth, of people under 35. So you're talking of, unlike the other nations which are facing huge deficit in young people, India is going to have a boom of young people. And these young people who are coming out of schools and universities are those who will be working in all the industries which has already started because they are taught in English. So there is a huge demand for Indian software technicians, engineers, doctors. So
Yeah, we could use a few more. Send them over there.
Well, we're at the limit. I mean,
Yeah.
India is the second.
There's a quota,
Yeah, 140,000.
and beyond that you can't.
That's crazy because we need more
Companies.
doctors.
Yeah, but
Well, they need doctors there too. You really don't want to take all the educated, skilled
No, I
doctors from
understand
India.
that.
But
Okay.
can you get, is healthcare available for if you, living in an undocumented slum and stuff?
yes. So what regarding healthcare, one of the nice things is that since we don't have a social security plan for the poor, what we have is public hospitals. So the poor get access to public health through these state-owned or corporation, the municipal corporation-owned hospitals. And these are very good, equipped offices. But like everything which is public, the wait is long and people do not get access. We just now had a situation where one of our main coordinators of our work, Lakshmi, she was diagnosed to have a surgical procedure, and which could have been cancerous.
One of our main leaders.
So in the public, so we had to literally run from one hospital to the other because, and also get some things done outside because the waiting list they said was a month for a simple CAT scan, and for an MRI it was nearly 2 months or 3 months, and they were diagnosing her with something which needed urgent help. So one has to then go out of the way and do some of the procedures outside, and then to use the public hospital. So it's very difficult for poor people who need urgent medical care. So for women especially, if any urgency like that is there, they have to take the help of quacks in the slums. And all these slums are full of doctors who are willing to do any procedures for money. And sometimes they may not even have a certificate.
Much less
So
sanitary scaffold.
due to illiteracy, women are forced, in fact if they were to wait, they have a better chance if they were to wait in those public hospitals. But they are treated so badly and there's such long queues, and so they tend to just jump the queue by going to somebody next door.
Well, because you're hurt.